Hi, I'm Kazor, and while we wait for the official talent trees for warriors, I want to cover the most interesting arms and fury talents that Wowhead has datamined from the alpha. Quick disclaimer, all of these talents are datamined and not officially confirmed by Blizzard, so some of these talents might not be in the talent trees when they're officially revealed. Let's start with the interesting talents that I think will be in the class tree. The first one to look at is Armoured to the Teeth, which gives strength equal to 10% of your armour. In my current gear, this talent would give me 180 strength, which is comparable to a potion but with 100% uptime. Although this talent is just a passive stat buff, I thought it was worth mentioning because of how strong it is. It would be a mandatory talent for any DPS warrior. It's worth noting that Wowhead thinks this talent will be in the Protection tree, but this talent is in the Fury tree in Wrath of the Lich King, so we'll have to wait until Blizzard releases the warrior talent trees before we know for sure. The next talents to look at are Honed Reflexes and Renewed Strikes. These talents both do the same thing, so I think that it's likely that only one will be in the talent tree and one will be scrapped. This talent is a nice to have for arms and protection, but for Fury, the 2-second cooldown reduction on Bloodthirst works out to a 45% cooldown reduction, which, synergized with other talents I'll mention later, is likely to be strong. The final class talent I thought was interesting is Reinforced Armaments. Assuming that the damage increase only applies to auto attacks, this talent would be a 7.5% DPS increase for arms and a 10% DPS increase for Fury, and would be even stronger if you have access to a Wind Fury totem. It also could synergize well with two Fury talents that I'll mention later to help make single-minded Fury a more viable option. Now on to the Fury talents. Fury has two interesting synergies that I've discovered, assuming that all of the talents will be in the trees. I've named these synergies the Bleed Synergy and the Single-Minded Fury Synergy. The Bleed Synergy contains the talents Honed Reflexes or Renewed Strikes, Blood Craze, Bloodborne, Cold Steel Hot Blood, Cadence of Fujieda, and Odin's Fury. This build is focused around the returning Azerite trait Cold Steel Hot Blood, which makes Bloodthirst crits generate additional rage and apply a Gushing Wound. The talent Blood Craze will ensure that Bloodthirst will crit more often and increase the uptime on Gushing Wound, and Bloodborne will make the Gushing Wound and the bleed from Odin's Fury do more damage. The 2-second cooldown reduction on Bloodthirst from either Honed Reflexes or Renewed Strikes, combined with an additional 5% haste from Cadence of Fujieda, will allow us to use Bloodthirst more often, further increasing the uptime of Gushing Wound. The Single-Minded Fury synergy seems like an attempt from Blizzard to make dual-wielding one-handed weapons a viable playstyle. It contains the talents Reinforced Armaments, Annihilator, and Frenzied Flurry. As I mentioned before, Reinforced Armaments will likely be good for every Fury build, but it will be especially good when combined with Annihilator and Frenzied Flurry, which also increase auto-attack damage. Both Annihilator and Frenzied Flurry also will increase the uptime of Enrage, which will increase the amount of auto-attacks you will do, allowing you to get even more value out of Reinforced Armaments. The only concern I have about this build is that Annihilator and Frenzied Flurry both do very similar things, so I'm not certain that both will be in the talent trees. It's possible that one of them has been scrapped, which will make this synergy less powerful. The last Fury talent I want to mention on its own is Pulverize. It doesn't specifically fit in with either of the other synergies mentioned before, but it could be quite interesting to play with. Pulverize makes Onslaught generate 10 additional rage and enrage you for 8 seconds. This is a quite significant buff to Onslaught, which has been an unused talent in Shadowlands. One thing that we don't know is how this Enrage will work. Will it extend the Enrage that allowed the use of Onslaught or overwrite it? And will the 8-second Enrage be overwritten by a regular Enrage from Rampage or Bloodthirst? Moving on to the Arms talents. Arms has 3 interesting talent synergies that I've discovered, assuming that all of these talents will be in the trees. I've named these synergies Colossus Smash Synergy, the Whirlwind Synergy, and the Execute Synergy. The Colossus Smash Synergy contains the talents Test of Might and Blunt Instruments. Blunt Instruments will only benefit you if you're using a mace or a polearm, so this synergy will limit your weapon availability quite significantly, but the extra duration of Colossus Smash will allow you to spend more rage during it, and therefore receive a bigger strength buff from Test of Might. The Whirlwind Synergy contains the talents Storm of Swords and Seismic Reverberation. Although Storm of Swords will increase the cost and cooldown of each individual Whirlwind, the 200% damage increase means that you will do the damage of 3 Whirlwinds in one global cooldown at the cost of 45 rage, instead of the 90 rage that you would have spent on 3 separate Whirlwinds. When combined with seismic reverberation, your 200% additional damage whirlwind will hit your enemies one additional time for half damage when attacking 3 or more targets. The Execute synergy contains the talents Fatality and Exhilarating Blows. With proper rage management, Exhilarating Blows will allow arms warriors to use Mortal Strike more often during a fight, which will help stack the Fatality debuff up faster, making your first Execute hit much harder. Depending on how Fatality is tuned, this could be an incredibly strong synergy that would make arms warriors very strong in the Execute phase, which would have to be balanced out by making them much weaker outside of Execute range. There's one talent that I want to talk about specifically in its own section, and that is Skull Banner. I think that this talent is likely to appear in the warrior class tree and will most likely be a required talent for all 3 specs. I don't want to go too in depth with my opinions on raid or party buffs in this video, because it's already going to be quite long, but in short, I think that raid buffs like Battle Shout or Arcane Intellect are fine because you only need one of that specific class to get the buff. Comment below if you'd like to see a full video discussing my opinions on raid-wide and party-wide buffs at some point in the future. But with party-wide buffs, like Skull Banner or Restless Crew from Outlaw Rogues, you're receiving a significant throughput buff that is limited to 5 people, which incentivizes class stacking if the buff is strong enough. These party buffs are seemingly being aimed at melee DPS classes to incentivize guilds to bring more than the usual 6 or so melee DPS. I like that they're trying to end the dominance of range DPS by giving extra advantages to melee, but I think that all that party buffs are going to do is force guilds to take a cookie-cutter melee DPS roster containing all of the party buffs, leaving less space for specs without those buffs like Feral Druid. If Blizzard does continue the design philosophy of the party-wide buffs, then I'm grateful to have Skull Banner, but I think the game would benefit from making these buffs raid-wide or removing them from the game. Let me know what you think about raid and party buffs though, I'm interested in hearing other perspectives. And that's all of the Datamined warrior talents that I found particularly interesting. Unfortunately I don't have access to the alpha, so unless I get lucky with next week's invite wave, I probably won't get to play with these talents in game for a while yet. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, subscribe, and let me know what you think of these talents in the comments below. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter @CazorYT to keep up to date with the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.